It started when my wife wanted to go to an artist retreat in Marrakesh. And somehow I ended up on the top of the highest peak in North Africa. In between, there were some problems.
And that's what we call the Berber Picasso. Why we call Berber Picasso? Because there is no face, no back, and very fine work.
Yes, I could have spent my time in Marrakesh listening to the carpet vendors and roaming the semi-exotic bazaar with the rest of the tourists. But where's the adventure in that? So one early morning, I roll across the empty market and past the idle horse carriages. With the traffic whizzing by, I meet a taxi, which takes me out of town and up into the Atlas Mountains. After about 90 minutes, I land in the town of Imlil, that some describe as Morocco's center of mountain tourism. And here I meet my required by law climbing guide. Sadly, in 2018, 2 Scandinavian women were murdered and decapitated in the national park. 18 people were arrested, and it was classified as a terrorist act. To save the tourism industry in that area, the government decided to make it a requirement from that point forward that anybody entering the park had to do it with a guide. Does that mean you're safer with a guide? No. Does it mean you might feel safer with a guide? Yeah, maybe. At about 1,800 meters or 5,900 feet in elevation, the route starts from Imlil, almost immediately climbing the narrow streets, and then veering off to a steep path, as if to mentally prepare us for the mountain climb the next day. Watching me always is my guide Ibrahim, perhaps scoping out how strong a hiker I am. After about a half hour, the trail passes the Berber village of Aroum and eventually levels off when it crosses the floodplain called Ait Mizain Valley, where we and the donkeys carrying some of our gear cross the river. Well, as is obvious, we're entering Toubkal National Park, which was founded in 1942. At the time, Morocco was essentially a French colony, even though it was called a country. And it wasn't until 1956 that it gained its independence and became a constitutional monarchy. As for the park, it covers 380 square kilometers. Now, to put that in some sort of context, that is roughly half the size of Yosemite National Park. The trail passes a checkpoint where guides are required to register their clients' passports. And I'm told police roam the trail looking for freelance hikers. It isn't clear what the penalty is if you're caught without a guide. After doing some research, I found Atlas Mountains Guide. And it is run by a man named Rashid, who was great. I really appreciated everything that he did for me. And so I put details about him in the description in case you want to hire them to climb Mount Toubkal. The trail steadily climbs alongside the Izuwane Valley.
Welcome, my brother.
The next stop is one of several trailside establishments with snacks and a juice vendor. Price for an OJ? About $2.
Hello? 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 What's his name?
I have no idea.
Strangely, it isn't until lunch that I have a chance to talk with my hiking companions, Adam and Jake, two mates in their mid-20s from Manchester, England.
What's your YouTube channel called?
I was just going to tell you. It's called Mr. Hall's Trail Guide.
Oh, great, cool, very nice.
Alright, I don't know.
So, yeah, when you get back home, look it up.
Yeah, I'll give you a follow.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely.
Hello! Oh. I'm glad I'm stuck.
Throughout the hike, altitude and elevation gain are reasonable, but the trail is so rocky, it's hard to maintain any kind of walking rhythm, which I find wears out my legs a bit. And of course, there are those for whom the terrain is nothing arduous. A shepherd from Arum brings up his goat herd each morning for the late summer grass.
Right. And now he coming in the morning to eat, and then afternoon same now he going down to the village. Right? Yeah. He sends them all down. Yeah, and he start early morning, at 7 or 6.
High in the valley, we finally start seeing the base camp where there's the large refuge du Toubkal.
Good job. Well done, Ben. How you feeling?
Feeling good.
Good. Sit down, Ben. Good. Strong.
The refuge here was built in 1938 by the French Alpine Club, and then another was added in 1999. Honestly, it's just a place to sleep. It's got a bunch of bunk beds crammed together. It has a kitchen and a place to eat. Now, for those who are planning on climbing in the winter, you must keep in mind that the water gets frozen before March and the toilets don't work. And year-round, bring your own toilet paper. Our dinner, packed in on donkeys and cooked in the refuge kitchen by the guides, is surprisingly fresh. Given that I'm used to freeze-dried dinners when mountain climbing, this feels awfully civilized. Gotta say, I did zero sleeping that night. As a matter of fact, I did zero sleeping the night before. So when we got up at 3 a.m., I hadn't slept for 2 days, and I was feeling pretty exhausted. The four of us leave at 4 a.m. with a half moon and headlamps as our only light. The barely discernible trail meanders up a rocky, steep slope. My lungs refuse to fill with air. A light muscle burn in my legs slows me. Less than an hour into the hike, I need to rest. Unfortunately, my pack was pretty heavy, maybe about 35, 40 pounds, something like that. It was full of camera gear, tripod, lenses, all that sort of stuff. And then on top of that, I had to carry a pair of crampons because there were snowfields at the top that were deemed possibly slippery. It probably dragged me down. There are at least 100 other climbers off in the darkness, plodding along. We pass one group and then they pass us when we pause to rest. Snow and ice start to show up on the slopes. I would have to say maybe a third of the way into the climb, I was actually thinking maybe I should stop, turn around. Just 227 meters of elevation gained from the top. The route comes to a saddle between two peaks known as a col in climber speak, where Jake and Adam start complaining about the slow pace. I don't blame them. They want to watch the sunrise from the peak, and it's clear the speed I'm setting won't allow that. Eventually, Ibrahim lets them join another faster group while he and I muddle along. I can't help but feel he's annoyed with me. You know, I was actually surprised at how hard it was for me to climb that mountain. You know, a month and a half before, I had climbed a 13,000-foot peak and had no problem, just cruised up it. And I was doing some conditioning specifically for this trip, but you know, I probably got cocky and I should have done more. It was really stupid of me. Perhaps I'm getting a second wind as the peak gets close. I can feel a shot of energy hit me. Not that I race to the top, but my legs feel a little sippier. And then Ibrahim points to the final ridgeline that leads to the summit. After more than 300 climbs under his sneakers, he pretty much knows there's another 15 minutes to go. And by 7:45, a half hour after sunrise, we hit the top. I think I was faking it. Not sure why. I think it was because Ibrahim was pressuring me to get off the top and start back down as soon as I could. And I just wanted to show some emotion, even if I wasn't really feeling it. No doubt when most people come to the summit, the first thing they see is this contraption. It's known as a triangulation station. And it was put here by surveyors in 1931 so they could pinpoint this very location. These days, well, hey, GPS does the same thing and it's a lot smaller. Well, no question, this is a popular place. As a matter of fact, 26,000 people every year try to climb this. There's no statistics on how many actually get to the top. Now, the first ascent was by 3 Frenchmen in 1923. I suspect there probably were a few Berbers who got there before them. Summit. This tall German came up to me and looked at me almost surprised, shocked really, and he said, "You made it." I wasn't aware anybody was paying attention to all my tribulations. As a matter of fact, as far as I was concerned, I wasn't the only one struggling to make it to the top. But somehow or other, he picked me up. The views from the summit are appropriately spectacular. I don't have a lot of time to appreciate the vistas because Ibrahim pushes for us to start down. He seems to think the half hour I spend there is plenty of time. I would say about halfway down, I started having a little problems. My legs were getting a little weaker. There was a lot of loose material, and I started slipping and sliding, tripping. A couple times I actually fell over. No, actually more than a couple of times. Several times I fell over. And finally it got to the point where Ibrahim said he had to hold my hand and hold on to me to make sure that I wasn't going to fall anymore. And so we held hands down most of the rest of the way. I have to add that although almost everyone else, including guides, is slipping on the loose rocks, I'm the only one getting this special treatment. When we got back down to the refuge, Adam and Jake had scampered down ahead of us. I gave Ibrahim a huge hug because I was so grateful to him for having gotten me down in one piece, well, with a few bumps and bruises. Now I recognize that Ibrahim was a smidge resentful for having to deal with me in the first place, but I think the hug, well, I would like to think the hug, erased all that. So by this point, it was 10:30, and we were going to be leaving at 11 for Imlil, which is, of course, where we started. And I still had some video to shoot. So I'm out and about, and who should come along but the German. First thing he said to me was rather sympathetically that he thought it was wrong that Ibrahim had hustled me off the top of the mountain as fast as he did. I have to admit, I really didn't care. I got to the top. That's all that mattered to me. And then he said this. I was really surprised that you got to the top, because people your age shouldn't be on that mountain. Well, what? There's a upper limit to the age that you can be to climb mountains? I'm going to have to look that up. In the meantime, there were people half my age climbing that mountain and struggling just as much as I did. But I guess that was okay, because they were younger. I still had a few days to kill, so I went south to the Sahara Desert. And if there's anything that's the complete opposite of mountain climbing, it's riding a camel into a remote camp with a late-night view of the stars that kind of glued the two experiences together. After all, there are no limits to how far we can see or the adventures that we can have. Well, after all that, it was a good hike.